Though this may seem to be an insignificant issue to many, whether or not we can eat meat sacrificed to idols is a question that we've received quite often. Because most people don't live next to a temple sacrificing animals to false pagan gods, the more modern question seems to be on the topic of halal foods. Halal is an Arabic word meaning lawful or permissible. Halal food is meat that has been slaughtered in the manner prescribed by Sharia law. For meat to be halal, it follows a prescribed method of slaughtering all meat sources excluding fish and other sea life. This method of slaughtering animals consists of using a well-sharpened knife to make a swift, deep incision that cuts the front of the throat, the carotid artery, the windpipe, and jugular veins. The head of the animal that is slaughtered using halal methods is aligned with the prescribed manner. In addition to the direction to be halal, permitted animals should be slaughtered upon utterance of Islamic prayer in the name of God.
Slaughterer allows the animal to lay on their right side while facing towards Mecca, both the slaughterer and the animal. Slaughterer says out loud, Bismillah Allahu Akbar, in the name of God the greatest.
Because of all this, it is largely interpreted that such practice could be defined as sacrificing meat to idols or false gods. We would not necessarily disagree with that understanding. In many respects, halal food would indeed be meat sacrificed to idols. Namely, the fact that the meat is butchered in conjunction with a prayer to another god, that assists in suggesting that halal food is indeed meat sacrificed to idols.
This is probably one of the number one reasons why I'm not eating meat this time. Was the blood drained properly? Was it processed in a plant that is halal? This is a very intense subject that needs to be discussed, and this is not going to be in depth at all right now. I'm just going to briefly touch the subject of halal. Halal is a practice of slaughtering animals in a scriptural way, which is good, right? Because Muslims eat animals in a scriptural way. The blood's got to be drained, not strangled, those kind of things. So surface level, good thing. However, there is much speculation that during this process, the animal is said to have been slaughtered in the name of this deity. Some say that's the same deity we worship. I do not agree. This is not something I have been able to prove or disprove. So halal meats are flooding our country and this world. Do your own research on the matter. For me, it's not worth the risk of eating something slaughtered to another god. But the decision as to where you get your lamb and any future meat, in my opinion, is between you and Yahweh. Do a little bit of investigation. You may be able to source local farmers who slaughter and butcher the animals the right way.
The Muslims believe in Allah, but Rabbi Potasnik would not compare anything. Would you care to mention anything?
Yeah, when I did before, I'll do now also. Allah is taken from the name from Elikah. Elikah, which is, we use that word all the time. We have the same God as the Arabs. We believe in the same God, one God. So it's a paradox. See, the Christians believe in the Trinity, whatever that's supposed to mean, but it's a part of it is their God, who's the JC we call him, but that's not our belief at all. We're not allowed to believe in anything like that. And we're in better terms with the Christians generally than with the Arabs, generally speaking. But we have in common, we believe in the same God. Right? As a matter of fact, I was speaking once to Moshe Feinstein, the greatest rabbi of our generation. He said, Allah, that's the Arabs' God, the same God that we have. He wasn't afraid to talk about it. They have the same God. But Allah means God, the Elokat that we say, and they believe in the one God who created the world.
Was there an event?
I don't know exactly why he was afraid to discuss it. I don't know.
Was there an event that made the Muslims break away and change the name of God to whatever?
Didn't change the name of God. It's Allah. That's the name of God. They didn't break away from any. Why did they break away? They come from the children of Abraham, of Yishmael. We come from Yitzchak, and they come from Yishmael.
When Mashiach comes, Israel will be taken back by the Jews. What's going to happen to all the Arabs?
The Arabs will recognize that Judaism is the real religion. Of course, they're, as I mentioned many times, they're very close to us in our religion, more than the Christians, because they believe in one God, the same God we believe in. Not like the Christians who believe in their God.
God, Allah. I mean, it almost seems like it's a different God that they're praying to.
Of course, it's the same God. And I just say it, Christians who say that Muslims do not worship the God of the God of Abraham, when you say that to a Muslim, you are making yourself look like a complete idiot. And Muslims will laugh at you. They believe not only that Abraham was a prophet who was a Muslim, but not in doesn't mean if you walked over to Abraham and asked him what you believe, you say I'm a Muslim. That's an Arabic word. It means that Abraham submitted himself before God. And every Muslim believes that Yitzchak was a prophet. And every Muslim believed, in fact, most of the prophets, the 25 prophets in the Quran, were Jewish. And Yaakov was a prophet. So therefore they believed in the God of many, many prophets, including Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, of blessed memory. And Christians who tell Muslims that they worship moon gods and shmoon gods and all these things, I really want to save you embarrassment, because the Muslims are going, this person needs medication. They have no idea what you're talking about. They worship one true God, and therefore Islam has a unique status and great respect in the Jewish faith. Is that Muslims are B'nai Noach, which means that they worship one true God. They worship one God. And I'm going to say this to my Muslim friends. When Christians say to you, or say that, Christians do that, they say that Muslims worship a moon god and all kinds of crazy things. They're all liars and they're nonsense. And the Christians who say this, you're making yourself look like idiots in front of these Muslims. I'm going to say to the Christians who attack Muslims, you should really search yourself, because a Jew is not allowed to even walk into a church. In Jewish law, I cannot walk into a church. I'm not even allowed to step in. I can't use the bathroom. I cannot walk into the building, because unless they don't worship the Trinity, but because they worship a man as God, so it's complete idolatry. No Jew is allowed to walk into a church in Jewish law, but a Jew can go into a mosque. If he wants to, he can pray his afternoon prayers. We pray 3 times a day. We could pray more, but we have 3 times a day. If I want to say my mincha prayer, the afternoon prayer, if I want to say shacharis, I can ask my Muslim friends. I live in the largest Muslim country in the world. I have many, many friends here who are Muslim leaders, and really I can ask them, may I use your mosque because I want to pray shacharis, my morning prayer? Not a problem at all, because they worship one true God. So it's just very important that a person should worship one God and one God alone. The Christians who make up all kinds of nonsense about Islam are really making fools out of themselves completely. And in Jewish law, Muslims have the status of B'nai Noach, which means they worship one God. So the answer is absolutely. You just worship one God and one God only. And that's all. This does not mean, incidentally, that Judaism and Islam are identical. That's not the case. But they worship one God. And you'll say, what about they believe that Jesus was a prophet? This is not an issue, because what Islam has done, really, is to strip away basically the problems of Christianity. Islam has a very unique status, and again, this is an area of idolatry, in that the Islam is definitely not idolatry. Muslims worship one God, absolutely worship one God. There are Christians who make claims about Islam that they worship moon gods. That's absolute nonsense. Muslims worship one God. They're very clear about that in Surah 2, 163. It's very clearly outlined in the Quran that there is no else, just one God, and therefore Islam has a unique status. in that they are not idol worshippers at all. They worship one God. And that is that God made a covenant with the children of Ishmael. Made a covenant with Hagar. God made a covenant with her son. You read Genesis 16. And out of him would come a great nation. Now, just as the survival of the Jewish people is astounding, I mean, there are only two biblical nations that are here today, the Jews and the Arabs, the Bnei Ishmael. For a very long time, from the time of Ishmael's death until the advent of Islam, all Muslims will tell you that the children of Ishmael were in a state of jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah means stupidity or absence of knowledge, without knowledge. But they knew that they were Bnei Ishmael. So I think the covenant that God made with the children of Ishmael is astounding, that we could see with our eyes that it was preserved. And in one way, it's as miraculous as the covenant God made with the children of Isaac. Okay? I don't know if you've thought about that, but
Rabbi, we're talking about the secrets of the Hebrew that reveal why conditions are in the world in which we live. There are only two biblical nations that have the name of God, El, in their names. Yisrael, that's Israel, and of course Yishmael, the Arabs. Is this a coincidence?
Well, of course, we must remember that in the Lord's language, in Hebrew, there is no word for coincidence. And the general rule is that if there is no word for a concept in the Hebrew language, then that concept doesn't exist. It's a false concept. There are two people, and this is what's so interesting. When God said to Hagar that she's going to have a son, God actually said what this child has to be named. He has to be named Ishmael. And when Jacob's name was changed from Jacob to Israel or Yisrael, there was also God speaking. So it's only two people who became nations, whose names were given to them by God himself, and whose names contain the word God, Ishmael and Israel. Those are the two nations. Now let's take a look and see what Ishmael means. Ishmael means God will hear him. Well, not surprisingly, Arabs pray, Muslims pray more than any other people on earth. 5 times a day they pray, constantly, because part of their basic heritage that's locked into their name and into their identity is this idea that God will hear them. And it's a tremendous advantage they have, because we have to be on the right track for God to hear our prayers. But God listens to them in a different way. So
le nom dans la Torah toujours évoque l'essence. Le nom, c'est ce que tu es. On ne parle pas de nom donné arbitrairement. On parle maintenant de nom que Dieu donne. Dieu appelle une chose parce qu'elle est. S'il appelle une chose parce qu'elle est et il met son nom dedans, ça veut dire que ces gens-là, dans leur essence, ils ont Dieu en eux. Et regardez, chose assez remarquable, le seul peuple au monde, la seule ethnie au monde, qui sert le même Dieu que nous. Le Dieu d'Abraham, Dieu unique, éternel, n'ayant ni femme, ni fils, ni petit-fils, ni Saint-Esprit, éternel, sans image, sans représentation, le seul peuple au monde, c'est Ishmaël, l'islam. Tous les autres ont une représentation, ou pas de Dieu du tout, ou plusieurs. Le seul qui sert le même Dieu que nous, le Dieu unique sans forme, elle, c'est eux.
My dear brothers and sisters, I was asked the question whether Allah is the same God as the God of the Old Testament. And I would like to elaborate on that. The answer to that question is yes. The Muslim concept of Allah is exactly the same as the Jewish concept of Hashem. Therefore, no matter what you hear, you know, some people like to claim that God, Allah is the moon god or whatever you hear, this is all nonsense. What it means today to Muslims is exactly the same what Hashem means to the Jews. That's really, there's no argument there. Our only argument between Jews and Muslims are whether Muhammad was a prophet or not. That's really the only argument. But the concept of God is, you know, really exactly the same. And therefore, you know, no matter what you hear, even if some Jews tell you that, oh, we don't believe in the same God as the Muslims do, they're only saying this because of political reasons. And everybody knows this, you know, since Jews and Muslims are at war in Israel, so some Jews may be prone to say, oh, therefore anything Muslims do, it's wrong. You know, they will believe in a different God, they do this, but this is all nonsense, you know. And in fact, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, who was probably the biggest scholar that ever lived. He lived about 1,000 years ago. He said he was really critical of those who are, you know, spreading lies just because of a political reason. And he was really critical. And he says those who say that Muslim concept of God is different and it's like idol, he says these are bad. This is you know, bad people. I don't know exactly which word he used, but he was really critical of those people. And he says that, in fact, he says the Muslim concept of God is exactly the same. And not only that, he says if a Jew needs to pray, he is allowed to go to a mosque and pray together with the Muslims, because the Muslim concept of God is exactly the same as the Jewish concept of God. So to answer the question, I want to repeat it and to make sure everybody really understands that, yes, the Allah is really the same God of the Torah. Allah is the same God of the Torah. And as I said, the only argument Muslims and Jews have is whether Muhammad was a prophet or not. That's really the only argument. As far as God goes, or Allah goes, we believe in the same God. In fact, as a Jew, I can say, and I can freely say this, and without even any hesitations, I can use the Arabic phrase Allahu Akbar, and have no problem saying this. Allahu Akbar, I can say this all I want. And even the part of the Shahada that the Muslims say, Lo ilaha illa Allah, I can also freely say this, and I don't feel any, you know, remorse about saying this, because their concept of God is exactly the same as the Jewish concept of God. Thank you for watching.
But are there any sort of significant theological differences between Judaism and Islam?
Theological differences? Or
yeah.
Well, I mean, the concept of God in Islam is very similar to our belief in God, as far as there being no physical representation.
Wouldn't the 7 laws of Noah, which the Torah says apply to all mankind, they would probably fit within Islamic law at present, would they not?
But, as far as the theology of Islam, they're certainly on the right track of the belief in God and things like that. Yeah.
We have to thank Allah. That's the beginning of everything. Bismillah. Bismillah, I want to thank Allah that brought me here from Jerusalem to Istanbul this afternoon, and I have no words how to express my obligation to Allah that gave me such a great grace to come here. After, by inviting me and other Jews and other rabbis, this perhaps we can be sure that the victory of Allah, whose one of his names, or his nicest name is Salam, is peace, you can be sure that Allahu Akbar means peace will win victory. peace will win victory. Allahu Akbar.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
Goal is to announce to the world, God is one, His royalty is one, His name is one. Or as you say it in the Quran, Allahu Wahad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalad wa Lam Yulad. God is one, God is eternal, and this is and our dream is to announce it, united, announce it to the world. And that's all those who are faithful in God. Inshallah. Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Rabb al-Alamin. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik ayyum adin. Ayyak na'abidu wa ayyak nasta'in. Khidna. Siyat al-Mustaqim. Siyat al-An'amta alayhim. Rai al-Mardubi alayhim. والله ضالين.
آمين. ما شاء الله. ما شاء الله. ما شاء
In this video, I want to talk about Allah, the God of Abraham. Often among Christians and Jews, I hear opposition against use of the term Allah in reference to the Creator, the God of Abraham, on the basis of several misunderstandings and lack of information. One of these is that the name Allah is, in Hebrew, the word for curse, which is, first of all, patently not true. If the individual is praying to one whom they call Allah, and they have in their mind no conception of any form or any corporality, but the historical God who created the universe, then that is not a false God. Regardless of any disagreement as to how the Creator of the universe interacted with mankind, Muslims, Jews, and the original followers of Jesus, who said that the greatest commandment is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. For all three of these, the Creator is one, absolute existence. He is not subject to change. He neither shares His essence or divinity with another, nor does He have origin in something else, nor does He multiply His divinity, and His singularity is incorporeal and incomparable to any other. I like to finish this video off with a quote from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 29, where in Hebrew it states, "There is no God with me." And in the Aramaic translation of Onkelos, it states, "Leth Allah bar minni. Ma'a salama, hayakum Allah."
Hello everybody. Surprisingly, we are in right now the mosque in the cave of Machpelah. This is pretty much where Muslims generally pray. If you look around here, you'll see that it's only open right now during the weekend where we read on Shabbat Parshat Chayesara, and we, the Jews, are praying towards Jerusalem.
שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד اعلم يا إسرائيل أن الله ربنا الله الوحيد